Hello everyone, welcome to my master dice polishing tutorial where we'll go from this to this. So to start out, you're going to need a few things. First thing you're going to need is some Zona papers. Zona papers are a wet polishing paper that we dice makers use to help us get to that beautiful glass-like, mirror-like shine that you see in most of our finished dice. You're also going to need some kind of polishing compound. I use Chemical Guys V34. You're also going to need a bowl of water. You're also going to need your master dice sanded to at least 1000 grit. This is optional. It's a mini pottery wheel with an acrylic disc. You can also just use a piece of acrylic or a piece of mirror or glass or some very flat surface to make sure you are getting an even sand. You start off by getting your piece of Zona paper, you soak it, you drench it in the water, and you just slap it onto your acrylic disc. Now, here's what you're not going to want to do. Obviously, you wet your dice first regardless. You don't just put it on the wheel and then turn your pottery wheel on because it will send your paper flying. So what you're going to want to actually do is you're going to want to stick it to your pottery wheel and then turn it on to let it start spinning, and then put your dice on after, like this. Once you place it down, make sure you're not putting a lot of pressure and make sure that the face that you are sanding is flat against the acrylic disc. You want to make sure that you're gliding back and forth, not rocking back and forth, because if you rock your dice back and forth, that's how you end up accidentally rounding and getting uneven faces. Now, here's a more up-close version. Make sure the dice is wet before you start trying to sand the face, obviously. And you're going to want to glide the dice back and forth. As you can see, I am gliding it. You can see I'm not rocking it, tipping it, or anything like that. I'm making sure that face is flat against the disc and the Zona paper. Because if you don't, you can end up warping that dice and then it will be completely unusable. And I'm just going to keep doing this for all of the faces on this half of the dice. I'm not going to be polishing the whole dice because I want you to be able to see the difference within the same dice. Now, once we are done sanding with the green Zona paper, you take it off the paper, wash it off a little bit, and then feel each face to see if there are any inconsistencies, because you'll be able to tell with your finger if there's something off with the dice. Next up, just dry it off a little bit so we can look at it, and you want to actually inspect the dice to make sure there aren't any inconsistencies that you can see with your eye as well. And as you can see here, this is the sanded side that we just did, and this is the side that is still raw. You can see some build marks and all that kind of things from when it was printed versus what we sanded off to make sure it was good and ready for the next step. So you're just going to go all the way from green to the white Zona paper, increasing and only using water on each one until we get to the very last one. And it's pretty straightforward. You just take the next Zona, dunk it in the water, slap it to your acrylic disc, and get polishing. And you're going to do it on each face that you are polishing. Now, if you are wanting to go for like that sea glass type look, I recommend only using up to the gray Zona. That way, you still get a little bit of that shine like you're wanting with sea glass, but it's not fully see-through. Now, you can see that the backs of my walls are exposed, and it's typically not like that. I actually have some foam board that I use to block water spraying up against the backs of my walls. I just forgot to put it up for this video. You can get them for $1 at Dollar Tree or some other dollar store or something like that. And just make yourself a makeshift polishing box just to keep water from splashing everywhere. You can also get a splash guard from Arcanicast. I had one for my smaller pottery wheel. It just doesn't fit the one that I'm currently using, or I would be using it here. Now, as I said, this is how I polish my masters. But a lot of people don't have access to a pottery wheel and the ability to do this. This is just better for me because it helps my hands and my joints not have to do it all as physically with my hands. You can get the exact same effect, however, everything is exactly the same except for instead of using a pottery wheel and a acrylic disc, you would just tape the Zona papers down on either a picture frame or a mirror or a piece of acrylic if you have it lying around, and just go back and forth on each Zona paper by hand. You would also go in back and forth and in tiny circles just to make sure that you are not putting in like visible track lines and stuff like that. You want to make sure it's an even sand. That way, whenever you get to your finished product, you can't see like lines through it and things like that. As you can see, as we keep moving up through the Zona papers, this face keeps getting more and more clear. As I said, I'm only polishing the 20 face, so you can see the difference between fully polished versus unpolished. As I said in the very beginning, you're going to use only water just to polish all the way up to the last Zona paper. And you can absolutely just stop there and still have a beautiful looking dice when you're done. However, what I'd like to do is use that polishing compound to get that final shine on the dice. It just helps make it a little bit more elevated and more glass-like and mirror-like, which is what most people like whenever they are making their dice. However, because of the nature of the polishing compound, it doesn't like to stick to the acrylic disc. And so I'm going to go over that a little bit once we get to that portion. Now, when it comes to polish, you're really just going to take some of your polishing compound and you're going to squirt it onto something that you can dip your dice into, like this. And just coat the faces that you're working on. I dip each face in when I go into polish. The other thing I'm going to show you here is that when you're using the polishing compound, I use a different cut version of my white Zona paper. You are not going to be able to just slap it down and start polishing like you would normally. This one you actually have to use some double-sided tape to keep the Zona paper down because it's not being stuck with water and it won't hold as well. Now, with using double-sided tape, you are going to off-balance it just a little bit. So do not press hard whenever you are using the tape to hold it down. It can cause a little bit of unevenness if you press too hard on the dice when you're polishing like this. So you want to make sure that you are gently touching it to the Zona paper. You can see right here, you can see how it's gliding, but you can also see how it's slightly bouncing just a little bit. That's because it's an uneven surface. So you want to make sure you are either going very lightly or as close to the center as possible. And you'll end up with a very beautiful shiny face like this. And and I took a microfiber cloth just to wipe it off, and you'll end up with dice like these. Now, all of my dice masters are 3D printed by Clerics Components. They're the only people that I use to get my dice masters from, because I just love the quality very, very much. And then all of my molds are made by Nano Lab Maker. I will link both of these creators down below. That way you guys can order from them and utilize their services, because I cannot recommend them highly enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions or want me to go more in depth about anything throughout this video, just let me know. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.